Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to assume it's okay to start. To make a start, yeah, I'll just go for it. Thank you so much for joining us for this session to look at keeping up with the growing space sector skills gap. So as you may have noticed, I'm not Kathy Bowden. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the IAF GNF organisers for being so flexible with us. Due to the sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen, we did have to make some last-minute rearrangements, should we say, to the UK delegation. But I'm absolutely delighted to be here with these distinguished guests to talk about this topic. So thank you. So the space sector skills gap, as we become more ambitious with everything we want to do with space, growing technologies, there's a real need to make sure that we look at how we can address, how we make sure that the sector gets what it needs from the workforce. And at the moment, this isn't happening. As an example, in the UK, approximately 40% of our space organisations say that recruitment is a barrier to their growth. So we're going to discuss this afternoon what other space agencies are doing to address these issues. Just very briefly, I'll talk about some of the causes for this. So as I mentioned, there are some rapid changes in the space sector, as we look at Space 4.0, but also like rapid developments in technology. The need to also upskill the current workforce and the upcoming retirement wave as well, as reported by ESA. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Enrico PALERMO, the head of the Australian Space Agency. We also have Mary PREVILLE, the VP of Space Program Policy. Thank you, apologies. And Kate KITAGAWA, the Director of the Space Education Office over at Jaxa. So I'll kick off. And Enrico, could you briefly set out some of the problems that you see in Australia with the skills gap?
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us here at the end of the day. I was really energised to be on this panel because, as Eva outlined, in Australia, in the UK, I think around the world, it's acknowledged that developing a skilled workforce, retaining that skilled workforce is probably the biggest inhibitor to growth of our sector. And that's certainly our case in Australia. We have a mission from our government to triple the size of our sector, to add an additional 20,000 professionals over the current decade. And that's a big task. And as we develop our programs, we've seen a proliferation of startups now scaling up. It's clear we can see the demand for the 20,000 jobs, but where are they coming from? What's the supply of those initiatives? So in our civil space strategy, we are now in phase 3 of the strategy, and one of the key deliverables we have for government and the Australian public is to grow the workforce, is workforce development. And so we're very engaged in this, and through the discussion, I'm quite happy to talk through what we're doing very specifically. One of the things we did very recently, actually last month, was we held our first national forum for space workforce, and I can talk through the outcomes of that. But we see the same issues. We're a young space sector, so an ageing workforce isn't as much as a problem for us, but certainly I can see in established space economies it's there. But building a diverse workforce, I think we see underrepresentation of women in our workforce in Australia, as well as our First Nations people. So they are key things our government is invested in. And case in point, our new Minister for Industry and Science, the Honourable Head Husick, just launched a review of our Women in STEM policy and initiatives. So we've invested in women in STEM programs, I think, several hundred, maybe $100 million over 10 years, hasn't moved the needle. So right now we're internalising the success of those programs as we look to how we grow the sector.
Fantastic, thank you, Enrico. Mary.
Thank you very much, Eva. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. At the end of the day, I hope you're keeping your energy up as we head into the evening and reception time. So the Canadian Space Agency has been surveying the Canadian ecosystem for over 20 years now, and so we have a really good set of data and information on the size of the Canadian ecosystem. This includes, of course, corporations, nonprofit organizations, academia. And the size of the workforce has been fairly steady for the last X number of years. So we have data going back to 2020 right now. It is survey-based, and so it really depended on the answers we receive. But we started asking questions about personnel and hiring and gaps before the pandemic. We had, so in 2019, 34% of the Canadian space companies faced difficulty hiring the staff that they needed. And just 1 year later, so our 2020 data, that number rose to 43% because of the growth. So 43% of just of Canadian companies having difficulty hiring the personnel that they needed. Really that they noted the main reasons, competition from other industrial sectors, which is interesting, and as well a lack of skilled applicants. They say over the next 5 years, the most sought after skill set that they will be needing are software development, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, as well as business development and commercialization professionals, which is interesting because we, as agencies, often talk about STEM and really forget or maybe don't pay enough attention to the business side. As well at the agency, because of the, let's say, growth in the commercial space sector, you know, the role of space agencies are changing. The role is changing, but still need a lot of professionals, certainly. We especially need project managers. We're facing as well an aging workforce in the space agency. No secret that government doesn't quite work at the same speed as commercial entities. So we're adjusting as well some of our practices to recruit. We have not had a retention problem, but more of recruiting and replacing those that are retiring. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Mary. It's quite interesting, the parallel there with the retention and considering some of the issues that we have in the UK around the early career retention, which is something that we particularly see. But yeah, Kate, please, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here as well. And I really share the same sort of conditions that has been described by Enrico and Mary. And so in Japan, of course, it has been an aged society for a long time. And very much of the problem has been always like what kind of jobs that you will do for life. And like you will change how many times. And usually Japan, the one person will work for one company. That has been a norm. But recent years, people are changing that norm and try to shift the ideas of how to use their skills and then get the new jobs. And then that kind of attitude started to work within the last 5 years. It just becomes obvious. So it started to affect our industries as well, of course, and then trying to get the new recruit, as Mary says, and also like a STEM field that has been strong in industry, but now like started to come back to the agencies as well. So the sector itself has been rigorous sort of movement in career changes and also new recruits. So that has been a condition in Japan. And also youth empowerment has become a new sort of movement. And that's why I probably be here representing Jaxa as a director of Space Education Center. So that really like, talks to, young people, like why they are working on STEM subjects. And that's because they have a long life and also like variety of jobs and careers that they will choose in the future. And also why are they really need to look into different sort of activities and not just in a one-time event as a learning for themselves, but also for others to really develop the communities that will grow together to have variety of careers, throughout the years. So the JAXA has been really looking into not just the current status, but looking into, some like decade ahead, like how we like to grow the new generation and then put them into a new mindset and then grow even faster than ever. So that's from Japanese, society and also, space sector. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Great answer. So, Enrico, I'm going to start with you now. If you could give us a little bit more detail about what you're doing nationally to address the skills gap.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one actually starts with data collection, and we worked with our partners at SmartSat CRC. I know we got Professor Sassanelli here from the SmartSat CRC, and we've co-funded some studies looking at the taxonomy of skills necessary for the sector. And I definitely agree with Mary. We tend to focus on rocket scientists in the media and STEM, but what we've discovered is, tradies, vocational skills, for example, as well as other skills, particularly around space law and space policy, are just as critical to grow the sector. So doing the data collection, doing the analysis, one of our pillars at the agency is to inspire. We're very fortunate to be in the space industry. It is often the thing that sparks that curiosity. So we have programs such as Australian Space Discovery Centre and programs of the nation that are really looking at the 20-year, 30-year horizon. Where is the talent coming from? So a lot of investment in our Inspire activity. And then we also do international agreements. One of the things we found is the ability for our professionals to work on international programs, to work with other space agencies, to have missions of significance is what attracts people to this sector. So there's sort of three things we've been working on, but as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, we had a forum a month ago. So this is how do we as the agency, we have a role, particularly because we're a sector growth agency, we have a role to sort of coordinate the nation. And so we brought together 150 professionals, academics from the sector, from outside the sector, in order to work out how do we take this forward. And this was feeding into a summit, a jobs and skills summit that was held at the beginning of this month, because our federal government, our new federal government, wants to create $1.2 million tech jobs over the next decade or so, and space is just one sector that's looking at. So I thought what I might do is I can't remember all of them, there's 6, is run through quickly the sort of 6 key themes that came out of the forum. We're in the process of analysing and synthesising these themes into programs, and then we'll bring together a second forum this year. But we heard categorically that skilled workforce is the biggest strategic challenge to our sector, and I think all the panellists probably agree with that. So the 6 themes. The first was diversity and inclusion. As I said, we're a younger sector. For us, it's really about making sure we have the right representation. We're really proud as an agency to lead the sector. If we look at our statistics, particularly with women representation throughout the organisation, but also in our technical fields at the agency. So we feel the agency has a leadership role for the sector, which we take very seriously, and that's reflected in our advisory boards and our various committees. So diversity and inclusion featured very, very highly. The next was that collaboration role, the coordination role across government and leadership. We're a small industry. Every state and territory is vying to be the space state in Australia. But how do we sort of turn that positive competitive energy into sort of something that adds up to much stronger? The third was, and this came out really strongly, was creating recognised is the key word, space sector training and employment pathways. So certainly there's formal programs from schools to university to PhD, but also internships and apprenticeships. And you'll see the Australian government invest significantly in the coming period in apprenticeships. The fourth was talent attraction and skilled migration. We recognise we actually don't have the bench depth in Australia right now to grow our sector, and so Australia is open for skilled migration to address our short-term needs, but to bring in the leaders that can train our workforce. And we've seen some great organisations such as Gilmore. They've had some overseas talent come in that now are training their team, and they've got graduate programs. And so it's not that the aim is to bring all the talent from around the world in, but bring enough talent that we can train and have that bench depth. So that was something we're focused on. The fifth was the importance of vocational and educational training, whether it's cyber welding. We didn't have much expertise in Australia around friction stir welding. And if you're going to build rockets, you need to know how to friction stir weld for particular types of rocket bodies. And we've coined the term space tradies in Australia, sort of the trades we need to build a sector. And then the sixth one I've already touched on is just improving our workforce data. So as the government agency responsible for the sector growth, what is the economic baseline? How do we work with our Bureau of Statistics? Because we're a new sector and all the codes don't necessarily tie to space sector, right? So we're muddled across all areas of government. So how do we actually collect data, know if our programs are generating a future workforce? So they're the 6 things that came out. We're now analysing and synthesising those to inform future initiatives.
That's great. Thank you so much. Very thorough answer. Mary, if I can go to you now.
Okay. Thank you. I'll split my answer into 3 components. One, what we're doing within the agency, for agency personnel, what we're doing to support post-secondary students, and as well what we're doing to support junior kindergarten to grade 12, grade 12 students. So I did mention that we don't have too much of a retention issue at the CSA. I don't know if that's because we're all getting older and we just don't want to go on to maybe a more stressful job. I'm not sure. But, it's a different world now with the pandemic or post-pandemic and hybrid work. And not everybody wants to return to an office or a lab setting or on-site setting. So we have tried to be very flexible in our return to work. We now have officially a hybrid model. It's not without its challenges, that's for sure. Some people don't want to come back to on-site. But it's still an experimental phase, I would say. But when, as a government entity, we don't want to lose our staff to other government entities that maybe offer a more flexible arrangement, and so we have been trying to be very flexible on that. We try as much as possible to develop our staff, professional development, certification courses, academic development. Here, actually, at the IAC this year, we've brought our largest delegation to the IAC in over a decade, and most of that was for their professional development. Just want to talk a bit about some of the programs that we have for post-secondary students, because those are really the ones who will go on and be your your mission specialist in growing the industry. We have a number of those programs. One is support to students. We have brought here about 10 to, I think it's actually 15 students. We have supported them. And we've also do the same thing for COSPAR, so that's some development for them. It's extremely good networking opportunity. We don't want to lose them to other sectors, as I mentioned, other industrial sector. We have programs that try and combine training opportunities with hands-on experience. We had launched in 2020, we call the Canadian Cubesat program, which we selected teams of students from 15 universities across the country. We were looking for 1 team per province or territory, so that would be 13. We were able to find a bit of extra funding for 2 more, and wildly successful, I must say. The first 2 CubeSats were integrated into the launch vehicles. Actually, about a month ago, launching to the ISS, they'll be deployed from there. So all of them had their particular applications. They were all seeking to solve a particular province in their region. With that success, actually one more thing I should say is that we had not intended it to be as well an industry, joint government, academia, industry, but industry joined the academic teams. It was really nice to see actually voluntarily, and they were providing mentorship and some experience for them. We've launched just open the competition for the next version. So we've called it Cubics. We've hoping to recreate that success, because the students tell us it is really extremely beneficial for them. The integration was done in our clean room at the CSA facilities, and you should have seen the students. Like they had not. Their enthusiasm is catchy. It's really so catchy. Some of them have gone on to create their own companies as well. They've graduated, and so we're seeing a couple of examples of that. So I'd really recommend it as a way of proceeding. We also have a few other programs that seek to combine development for students with either in the field. We are working to move to have actually more mentorship of the CSA staff to other young students or startups. That's something we're calling, part of what we're calling the Space Hub. And we stay tuned on that one, but we do have a lot of requests for, those experienced technical staff to pass on their knowledge. And the third part I wanted to talk about is the younger crowd. We're very fortunate in Canada to have a UMA space flight program. We have 4 active astronauts. Kids are just thrilled to see the astronauts in their blue flight suits, so we capitalize on that a fair bit. But we've stepped up our programming in that area. We have primary and secondary school education programs, training the educators, etc. We had what we called a junior astronaut recruitment program. If you've ever done an astronaut recruitment program, there is phenomenal interest. And so we recreated basically an astronaut recruitment program for kids about, I believe it was age 10 to 14. And through the year-long competition, they had to participate in so many events. And then because the pandemic hit and we weren't able to actually bring them physically on site, we chose, I think, 52 students random across the country. And we had a whole week of them working virtually, doing things like commanding a rover, tasking a satellite. Of course, we had our astronauts speak to them. So quite a lot of interest. And we've also stepped up our grants to not-for-profit organizations that can develop new activities for kids. For example, activities that involve robotics and AI to give the young kids an understanding of those fundamentals and the roles that they can play. And because Canada is a participant of the Lunar Gateway, we target a particular activity for the kids on robotics and AI in the Lunar Gateway environment, the cislunar environment. So those are just some of the examples that programs that we do.
That's great, thank you. And sorry, Kate. And that links really nicely into the taxonomy point and the skills profiles that Enrico mentioned earlier, just to kind of understand exactly what does it mean to work in robotics, which also might be one of the challenges. Sometimes I think space is a bit of a niche, is seen as a bit of a niche sector to get into. So it's great that CSA are looking at mentorships for young people to understand what actually working in the space sector looks like. So that's great, thank you. Kate, if I can move on to you.
Sure, thank you. So taking over your topic on education, that's perfect. So I'd like to first introduce you the program that we are running here now. So this is a program called ISEB, so International Student School Board. So it has started long time ago. It started long time ago, 2005, and the founding members are NASA, ISA, Jaxa, and also Canadian Space Agency. And now Australia has been represented by VSEC, and also some other agencies like CARI started to join, and they send students, mostly graduate students, but also some university students to IAC. So there is a booth called International Student Zone, and they gather and then try to exchange what kind of jobs that they would like to get, what kind of research that they do, and what actually happening in the space sector. So we have 85 delegates from those countries that we represent, and they are actually hard at work now, and they're trying to have a really hands-on experience with the audience, like one-to-one talks, so that they will know that what they are talking about, it's not just presentation to all, but some people from different countries will get the message or some sort of research reaction to it and so on. So they are really enjoying themselves by being at the booth and then trying to have a conversation one-on-one, and also trying to be a bigger part of space sector. So that's ISEF, so please do come to International Student Zone. So another thing, I like to introduce from the space education, JAXA, is that we started something called Jaxa Academy in August. So this August, that means like only 2 months old, but I started to realize that filling this gap is not just to target the young children, but for the young children to be getting involved in events or curriculums that adults have to be engaged. So we decided that JAXA Academy will deal with the global issues such as climate change, planetary defense, and so on, and they set the standard as the first or second year university student level, but we do not say that only graduate student, only university students can take it. So if someone from secondary school, they are interested in a topic, they are welcome. And someone from older age, they are trying to learn more about something on the global scale, they are welcome. As a result, when I did this first JAXA Academy online event in English, and note that Japanese do not usually do English events, but I tried. And what happened was, from the age 6 to 71 registered. And over 250 people tried to get together at one place, listening to the representative of NASA, ESA, and JAXA. Of course, it will be expanding soon, but this was a start. And we start to realize that youth empowerment, we really try to target the specific age and try for them to compete around their age. But I think this has to be changed. And that's why from this time, August, that I started to offer education for all. And that's really something that I would like to strongly advocate from JAXA's Education Center. And of course, as an ISEF, we have founding members here as well, and we will try to have subgroups, for example, for Cubesat, and that will be inviting more people from different countries to get together, and that will be more in person rather than online. So we will continue that sort of education, in a way traditional, pre-COVID, but still we love to see each other. We love to talk about our works in person. We love to discuss here, with many different people with background. So we started to develop, online and in person in tandem. So that's what we do. And at the larger scale, of course, the JAXA cares about work and life balance. So remote work is becoming the main sort of mode. But of course, we will have some time to come out to help in person and also discuss things in person. So we would like to have some sort of examples of what kind of things would work for what kind of age range or job-specific requirements. So we are now starting to have more survey taken and also try to have more into focusing on the balance itself. So we are not really completely shifted to remote and then shifted to office, but at the same time, we are really allowing all those range of things that the workforce can do. So that will be more accommodating and then making diversity real. So it's not just the age of people who are healthy and then just work, but we all have people to help, or we have to take care of ourselves. And those kind of things will all come down to work-life balance. And we really care about that for the generation to come, even if this is a great industry and a growing industries, that we need to think about sustainability. So that's why work and life balance really matters. And lastly, but we really want to have more diversity in Japanese society. And we are the mono language, like it's just Japanese only. Usually that's the case, but also there are more countries nearby to learn from. So Asia Pacific area, including Australia, that has been a great collaborators in many fields. And of course, like education too, the first countries that has an active relationship was in Australia. So I started to feel that geographical location still mattered somehow, and then try to be helpful to each other. And I would like to be also helpful, from JAXA's side as well. So those are the new development from JAXA. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you so much. And that leads very nicely on to my next question around what the international community could be doing to kind of work together to address the gap. So Enrico, again, I'd like to start with you, please.
I think I mentioned before, sort of international collaboration programs will attract, but exploration and science missions are going to attract a workforce to our sector. I think we're about to start the Artemis generation, and if you look at what Apollo inspired, I think Artemis has a chance to do that on a global scale in terms of inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs and engineers and scientists. So I think having space exploration programs that push the limits and test the limits are really vital. Forums like IAF, the International Space University, I'm a proud alumni. There's organisation SGAC, and every year we sponsor Australian students to participate in SGAC. I think as agencies, as industry, we need to get behind those forums. I think they show the diversity of our sector, to the 3 Gs with IAF. So Australia is a big proponent for those. So I think that international programs, significance in science and exploration, and supporting organisations like the ones I just referenced.
Absolutely, some fantastic organisations there. Mary, over to you.
Thank you. I was going to mention the International Space Education Board. Thank you very much for your very comprehensive answer. But the advantage of fora like this, or just international collaboration in general, is learning from each other and best practices. We all have bilateral or multilateral partnerships. I find they're very beneficial. We were able to secure or become eligible for Canadian students to be eligible for NASA internship partners, the internship program. So we sponsor a number of students to go and work at NASA. And what's interesting about that is we started it just before COVID, and of course we had selected all the students, everything was arranged, and then of course they couldn't travel. So we actually opened, we shared with their requests, we shared not just the 10 or 15 students that had been selected, but everyone who had applied. We provided all their names and CVs to our industry, again with their success. And one company alone made 80 contacts through that process. So, there's a lot that we can do, not just internationally, but as well, governments and industry working together. Canada is a cooperating member of the European Space Agency, so again, that provides us access to some of their training programs. It is a relationship that we value, and in fact, it's a 43-year relationship. We talk about how beneficial it is to Canadian industry, but it's also very beneficial to developing skills and for Canadian students. I did want to mention just the best way to get, I think, individuals, youth, or maybe others who are in other industries, excited about the space industry, really is putting things in space. So Canada is the third partner in the James Webb Space Telescope with NASA, ESA, Canadian Space Agency. We provided 2 instruments. When that launch happened on December 25th, during the next week or so, we gained, and this is big numbers for Canada, but we gained 72,000 new followers on our social media platforms. And so, you know, as a small agency, if we could get more things to space more often, that will really attract individuals. And then just internationally, and I mention it in the international section because it was an international partnership. So a lot of our missions are international partnerships. And then I did want to just briefly mention, maybe a little bureaucratic, but last year at the IAC in Dubai, the Canadian Space Agency, the DLR, the German Aerospace Center, and Jaxa signed a letter of intent to work on the problem together of skills and global human resources. They've had their first year of work together. I think we understand it's going very well. Looking for more partners to try and map out and really get a better handle on some of the issues and best practices. So, thank you.
Thank you, that's great. Kate, finally.
Sure. So the part of this alliance, that's really important for us to grow and then have more members coming in. So please do make sure to look at the website and then try to contact us. So on top of that, I think international collaboration has been very much done in many fields. Of course, like missions, you know, they have to collaborate with like many other agencies and also researchers, and also Earth observations. So they have data, but we're not really just only taking the data from the regional, you know, just a part, but you know, have to see the globe, right? So I think those collaboration has been the flagship for Jaxa, and it has been done really well and been effective. And for the regional scale, again, this APRSAF, so Asia Pacific Regional, you know, Space Agencies Congress, that has been studied to become in person again. And in November, we are meeting in Hanoi. And what I would like to pay attention to is the main sort of like players into filling the gap, or like, you know, making the, you know, smaller skills gap is an educators. I think they are working hard at it. And for the APR stuff, I would like, we already set up the workshop for educators to gather together and then discuss the current practices, and also how better that we can integrate the international sort of roles to play. So not just like one country is developing the educational materials, but if we exchange those materials, that will be like better and faster. So we have this regional congress of educators planned for November in Hanoi. And that would be an excellent start. And we would like to take it to that global level to the next years to come. So that's another thing that I'm very excited about. And then, of course, educators, they are really working hard at it. So I think those are the great force to see in the future to how, you know, well we tackle the skills gap. Another thing that we would like to do is a collaboration with, again, industries, but also some sort of like new sectors that connects agencies, industries, and the public, which are the museum sectors, for example. And those are the gathering places for many people who sort of like bring in the elements that they are strong at. And sometimes, like, you know, they will be working together, blending in, and then creating a new force. So I think those kind of places, like public space, that will be shared by international, you know, collaborators. I think those are the main things that we are looking at from the Jaxa's Education Center. So just to add on, like, you know, what we have been sort of agreed on to fill in this skills gap, that there are new initiatives and also new sort of, you know, places for us to discuss and continue to have collaborations internationally. So, thanks.
Thank you, that's great. And I think all of those answers have highlighted the need for collaboration and sharing best practice, not just with international partners, but also looking to other sectors, as all three of you have mentioned. So that's great. Just before we close, I'd just like to ask you if you've got any final key thoughts. I did have a question about the role of equality, diversion and inclusion initiatives in addressing the gap, but it's just been so fascinating hearing all of your inputs into this topic. So we've run out of time a little bit. So if you'd like to sort of make a final comment or two, and if you'd like to address this point as well, please feel free. But any final thoughts on the topic? Thank you. Enrico.
I think I've covered a lot of the points I wanted to cover. I mean, this is a critical inhibitor to growth of the sector. We need to build a diverse workforce in Australia and the world, and why not have space lead all tech sectors is something I'm personally passionate about. From an Australian perspective, I'm also passionate about making sure we have gainful and rewarding careers. It's a personal passion because I left Australia in 2005. Australians are very nomadic, but I left Australia in 2005 to go work in the space industry because we didn't have the opportunities we have now. And so I'm very much want to see that we have careers from graduates all the way to career professionals and opportunities like that. So it's a personal passion, it's very important. And I think the agencies and the sector has a real opportunity to lead here, because I think this is a sector that can attract the best talent in the world. Absolutely,
great answer. Mary, over to you.
If I may, my final comments, if I could sort of go back actually to the diversity and inclusion question. In Canada, about 60% of university graduates are women. About 42% of those graduates in STEM fields, but only 28% actually work in the space sector identify as women. And just a little plug, in the fall of next year, 2023, I guess, yeah, in Montreal, we will be hosting the UN Space for Women expert meeting. So you are all welcome to come. Stay tuned for further details on that. We do also really try to build in mechanisms in our funding initiatives to help increase diversity and inclusion in the broader Canadian space sector. And so, yeah, it's a continual work, and we've recently appointed within the Space Agency a champion for Indigenous and communities, who herself is Indigenous, and so we hope to really focus on that sector and grow our programs in that area. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you. And Kate, over to you.
Thank you. So I think I'd like to thank UK Space Agency for hosting this great workshop, or say discussion, to begin the further discussion. I think when I visited or be told by Sarah Jane that, about this topic, that made me feel that, you know, Japan has been doing a lot, because this has been a great, you know, sort of issues that we need to tackle on right away. And now that I started to hear about, you know, more countries' representatives, that it is a common issues that we like to be really, you know, make a challenge and then tackle on it immediately. So I think this is the start of, like, you know, many years it has started, but also like a new start of more actions and also like more initiatives and more conference and meetings to come. So I think, you know, it has been like, you know, great sort of like awareness raising for me to really like participate in this panel. And also I like to say about us listening to your opinions or suggestions. So space agencies, like, we knew you know, what we are doing, but also we like to hear about, like, you know, what else, or what kind of new things, or what kind of, you know, things that can make things better. So we are listening, so we like to be really in conversation with all of you in the audience. Thank you.
See, what a wonderful point to end on. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining this session. Thank you to you for listening. Unfortunately, we didn't have any time for Q&A, but please do reach out if you've got any comments or anything like that. But thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your days.